take it away.
Okay, welcome to a very special Heresy Hammer episode today. This is one of our Tactica episodes. The Iron Warriors have besieged our paywall and broken through. Dawn and his yellow boys couldn't hold it any longer, and this particular one has slipped out. So we just wanted to kind of do a special bonus Tactica episode this month because today's the day that everyone should be getting their hands on the new Plastic Deredeo Dreadnought. So a kind of a unit that we've started to see more and more of recently. I seem to find. I think when the game kind of first came out, we didn't really see the Deredeo very much, mainly because obviously it's an expensive resin kit and there are lots of kind of new, shiny, exciting plastics. Whereas now this is now available in a new, shiny, exciting plastic. So what we wanted to basically kind of do this episode is we're going to kind of run through kind of how you can kind of build your Deredeos, how you can leverage your Deredeos, how it can kind of fit into your list, and kind of what sort of functions it can perform within your army. Gents, what are your thoughts about the Deredeo?
So I've been to a couple of events of late, and the one that keeps on cropping up is the las cannon, the Iraq's las cannon option, and then with the Alios missile launcher. I will talk about the missile launcher and the Boreas missiles in a bit, I think later. But I found that the las cannon option can be so devastating against land raiders, basically. Like, they're so easy to just blow up, especially with the fact that they've got Sunder, they're twin link now, they're strength 10. So I've seen loads of those on the table. The fact that you can take them in talons now makes them even more attractive, because before, in the first edition, they were fighting over those heavy sport slots because you could only get one in one slot, right? So now it's less of an option. And I think this is a great choice as well if you're running something that you need a bit of long range firepower, long range punch, but you only have one heavy support option because of a particular right of war. This is a really great option, but mainly because it's just on a survivable chassis. It's not on a tank chassis, which just gets blown up straight away. It can react. We'll talk about the target array in a bit, but the target array has a number of rules which are great when it stays still, either skyfiring or ignoring shrouded. So it's a great option, but I think that some weapons are better than other options is probably what I would say.
That's fair enough. Lee, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I run the las cannon option, but I actually find it a little bit hit and miss.
Right.
Because we'll get into it later on, but it's good. I don't think you're not blowing up a land raider every turn. It's not that good. And to be honest, because I needed anti-tank in my list, I never really considered any of the other options until they started showing the plastic version. So I think depending on what, I think you're very much guided how you're going to equip it by what your army is lacking and what you want to run it for. But I mean, we'll get into weapon options later on. But
just to add to that, Lee. So although you've not been able to blow up a land raider every turn, I've definitely had my land raiders blown up every turn.
I feel like this is probably my shit rolling and your shit rolling. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong; it's certainly capable of popping a land raider every turn. But yeah, we'll have a look at the weapon options.
Absolutely. I think to echo some of what Rob was saying as well, I've seen some of the options used at events to quite devastating effect, actually. And I think also the thing as well is there was this kind of not actually misconception, but in 1.0 you took a Deredeo to perform a very specific task, and that was to deal with flyers. It was one of the few things that could deal really, really well with flyers. And obviously now, because flyers have just completely dropped out of the meta because of various reasons. They're big and expensive, and they can be easily intercepted, and they're not very survivable. I think that people just thought, well, there's no point taking Deredeos because there are no flyers to deal with. So why would I bother? And actually, I think that we much like a lot of things in the game, you've kind of seen them kind of come back into fashion recently. I think people have realised that there's actually a lot of play with this, and I think the new plastic kit will only help. Just before we get started, we just wanted to sort of say a big thank you to all of our existing supporters on Patreon. We wanted to put this one out as a bit of a bonus. This is coming in addition to the two other Tacticas that we've produced this month. So for those who don't necessarily know, we produce a couple of additional videos every month over on Patreon where we take a bit more of a tactical deep dive into specific units. So either stuff where there isn't kind of like obviously good, where we can maybe think about other ways of integrating it, but also look at kind of synergies and ways of kind of bringing some of these units into your list. So if you want to head over to Patreon, you can subscribe and get those additional videos for just £3 a month. If you want to support us more and get other tiers and other kind of rewards, then we have plenty available. But if you head to patreon.com and search for Heresy Hammer, you can join our community of over 230, I think we've got as of time of recording. So thank you very much to everybody there. So, without further ado, whilst you're building your Plastic Deredeo, how are you going to equip him? So, we're going to start by taking a little look at the chassis itself. We've had some of the images in the presentation that have been submitted by some of our viewers and supporters. This one comes from the Cutting Board Forge. So, stat line, quite familiar. It's what you've come to see from all the Dreadnoughts so far this edition. So it's movement 7, weapon skill 5, which is good from a defensive perspective, but it's not going to be particularly offensive in combat.
Yeah,
it's fair to say. Toughness 7, 6 wounds, initiative 4, 2 attacks, leadership 9, and a 2-up save. So I think it's the toughness 7 and the 6 wounds that really benefit it, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, can't be blown up straight away. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, exactly right. Can't be one shot.
Yeah, exactly.
It's also, as Rob said, it's available in a Talon now, so you can take multiples, and much like all the other Talons, they can then operate independently. So you can take 2, equip them differently for different roles. They can overlap to perform the same task with a bit more kind of sustained fire, or they can perform 2 different tasks.
Yeah,
so much like the...
It's interesting. Sorry to interrupt, John. It's really interesting you say that. So the last 2 opponents that I've played, who've had a pair of Dreadeos and a Dreadnought Talon, when they've played the game, they have assumed that they are one unit and have to fire at a single thing.
Yeah, no.
Actually, I've kind of gone, no, they're 2 separate things. So it's better to fire one and then fire the other to see if you can blow up that first thing, right? So that's really important. It acts the same way as Contemptors. They can just split off and do their own thing, which makes them so versatile for just one heavy support slot.
Yeah, absolutely as well. And I think as well at 205 points, I think when you consider the equipment and its capabilities and kind of what it can do, I think actually kind of really, really quite well priced.
Yeah, really well priced.
I've been kind of started to redo my Iron Warriors recently, and when I've been kind of list writing and list hammering, I've been kind of wanting to squeeze a Leviathan into it because I want it to, but a shooty Leviathan. And there's part of me that's thinking, well, actually, can I take a Deredeo instead and perform the same task for 70 less points?
Yeah.
So it comes with standard war gear is the Anvilus autocannon battery, a twin-linked heavy bolter, which sits kind of in its chest. It's got 2 little cannons. It's got 4 Boreas air defense missiles, which is an interesting one because that's not what comes in the box.
Yeah,
we'll come to in a second. It's got an atomantic deflector, which is the same as you see on the Contemptor Dreadnought. So giving it a 5 vulnerable save and meaning that it can't be instant death, or instant death causes D3 wounds as opposed to a flat out instant kill. And it also comes with a helical targeting array. So do we want to go through what the helical targeting array does? I know it's a piece of war kit that exists on other units, but it's built into the Deredeo.
Yeah, I think it's really important to go through. And I think this is where a lot of its points, like lots of its value, sits as well. The
100%. Yeah. So, Lee, do you want to take us through what
I'll read it.
Targeting array does?
Helical targeting array. The controlling player of a model with a helical targeting array may activate it at the start of any of their own turns, or if the controlling player is not taking the first turn of the battle at the start of the battle before the beginning of the opposing player's first turn. Once the helical targeting array is activated, the model is affected by the following conditions. until the beginning of the controlling player's next turn.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so just yeah. Oh, sorry, go on, John. Go
I
on.
think we're both about to cut Lee off. You have to declare that you're turning it on, basically.
So yeah, essentially, that's a lot of words saying you have to turn it on before you use it. So if you're not going first before the battle begins, you need to tell your opponent, "I'm switching on my helical targeting array,"
or not, obviously.
Yeah. And that's a significant change from first edition, where basically if you went second and your opponent say had like orbital assault, you couldn't use like interceptors or something like that because you couldn't switch it on. So they've clarified that, they've sorted that out, and that's brilliant. I can't see a situation if you're going second that you would never just switch this on. You know, there's not a scenario.
As obviously our position within the community, are we going to now set the as to the use of the helical targeting array? Are we going to say that it's always on unless you say it's not, or are we going to say it's always off unless you declare it on? So that's, I think we need to consider that as well. Maybe if you let us know your thoughts in the comments of how you might play it. Right, Lee, carry on.
So, what happens when you turn it on? The model may not move, run, or declare, or make any reactions other than the interceptor or overwatch reaction.
Okay, yeah.
Important to know, so it can't return fire.
That's really important to know. I mean, so if it is on, we'll look at the bonuses in a bit, because the bonuses are really good, but you can't. This then can't return fire,
or it can't. Yeah. I'm about to say it can't evade, but it's got fire vulnerable anyway. So it's not problematic. But...
So that's really important that you can't return fire with it, because it's a shooty Dreadnought, so you want to. And I suppose that is one of the things around, if you have it on at the start of the battle, you're kind of saying to your opponent, you can shoot at my Deredeo, and there's not a lot that I can do against you here if you do switch it on straight away. So there's something to consider, an important thing to consider with the targeting array.
Yeah, you just need trying to tank the wounds and hope for the best, basically, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly right.
Okay, next point. The controlling player may choose to use the Skyfire special rule when making any shooting attacks with the model. So in first edition, this was the main reason why you would use helical targeting array to shoot flyers, whereas nowadays it's probably not as prevalent. No model may make a damage mitigation roll provided by the shrouded special rule against an attack made by a model with a helical targeting array while it is active.
This is huge.
This is
massive. Yeah. So we'll talk about it when we come to the plasma in a bit. Why I think that this is particularly really strong.
Is there an argument, for instance, if you're going second, to not have your helical targeting array active, so you could potentially return fire and then turn it on at the start of your turn?
Yeah, so because your opponent wouldn't be able to, unless your opponent for some reason has a ton of shrouding. So I can think of like Alpha Legion, Headhunter Leviathan, where it gives infantry outside of 12 inches of an enemy opponent shrouded on all their infantry. There might be an argument to be like, oh no, I'm just going to have it on. But there will be some cases, I think, to kind of go, or maybe at the start of the battle, I need to switch it off or on or whatever. But yeah, it's a great rule, and it makes it particularly great for killing tanks, I think, because you're just like, that Land Raider, it won't get it shrouded safe now. It just ignores shrouded.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is wild when we talk about something as well.
When the model makes a shooting attack as part of the interceptor reaction, the reaction does not cost the controlling player a point from their reaction allotment. This does not allow the unit to make more than one reaction per phase, but does allow the controlling player to exceed the normal 3 reactions limit in a given phase. So again, it's pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
It's limited to its reactions, but it doesn't cost you a reaction, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then the final one, when a model with the vehicle unit type and a helical targeting array makes a shooting attack as part of the interceptor reaction, that model may fire all of its weapons, not just defensive weapons, as part of the shooting attack.
Yeah,
so it doesn't affect the Deredeo, but is actually really fucking good to know.
Yeah. So I'm sort of thinking I might potentially, I might not want to turn my helical targeting array on before the start of the battle if I'm going second, just to enable me to return fire potentially.
Yeah, yeah,
or
it's something to consider.
make a movement reaction possibly as well if I feel like people are going to be up in my grill kind of quite early. So maybe something to consider there as well. But let's be honest, start your turn one, you're going to be slamming that bad boy right on and absolutely just blasting.
Yeah.
So let's have a little look at the weapon options. Rob, do you want to talk us through what the additional options for the unit are?
Yeah. So first of all, you basically get an extra Dreadnought for 205 points. So you're not saving any points
No.
by getting multiples of them, and you can only have 2 in that heavy support slot. Although 2 is plenty, I think 3 would be a bit excessive. So for a 15-point upgrade, you can have a Hellfire Plasma Cannonade, which is the other option that comes in the new Battle Group box. And I think this is an excellent option, as we'll see in a bit. For 20 points, you get the Arachnus Heavy Las Cannon Battery, which is also a good option. But for free, you get the Volkite Falconet. Now, I think this is the most awesome-looking weapon, but I think that you would only use this if you have a lack of anti-infantry. Well, again, we'll have a look at that weapon in a bit, but it's just interesting that it's a free upgrade. Mm-hmm. You can have twin-linked heavy flamers for free. I think that most people, the general consensus will be, it's better to have the heavy bolters on a longer range shooting platform than it is to have. I think if your opponent is charging or is so close that you can use the heavy flamers, that it is probably game over for the Deredeo. And then you get the Aeolus missile launcher for 5 points as well, which I think if you're doing it straight out of the Battle Group box, it automatically makes your Deredeo 210 points because you're going to have to run that. You don't have any other option currently apart from that. And we will compare the stats on the Aeolus and the Boreas missiles in a bit. But in general, I think that there's nothing there that screams that anything is undercosted or overcosted. It seems quite balanced to me.
I agree.
Especially being on the other end of the Las Cannon Battery. I mean, Lee might disagree with me with but I definitely think that 225 points for just the Boreas and the Las Cannon Batteries is actually pretty good.
Yeah,
and I think that I just can't understand, because lots of people might be like, oh, well, you only get 2 shots, from the Las Cannon Battery, right? But, it's on such a tough chassis. Like a Dreadnought chassis is just so tough, when you compare it to, say, like a Predator or whatever. So I think that's where a lot of the points come from.
Absolutely. I think also as well, it's worth bearing in mind as well that although we suspect that the other weapon options will be available separately, much like the Leviathan is, you can still purchase the Volkite Falconet and the Arachnus Heavy Las Cannon Battery and the Boreas missiles from Forge World as separate weapon options.
Yeah, can you still do that now? Are they still available?
Yeah, it's still available now. And there's some useful videos on Instagram of people who've magnetized the plastic one to accept the various weapon options. So I think don't be afraid about heading over to Forge World and grabbing a bit as well. So these are the weapon options that are in the box. So you start off with the classic Anvilus autocannon battery. As we know, I'm a huge fan of an autocannon. So this is a heavy 4 autocannon. So again, long range, 48-inch range, strength 7 AP4, but it is rending 5 up. It also has Sunder and it is twin linked as well. Something we did mention actually, John. Would you mind just popping back to the previous slide for something that we have not discussed? So you cannot buy searchlights for this, like the contender. So although lots of the ranges are over 24. Number one, you're either going to have to fire it at things that already have their searchlights on if you want to draw a bead from that first turn if there's night fight, or you're going to have to pair it with a tank that's got a searchlight in order to light it up. So that's something to consider. If you're a Night Lord, we'll come to Night Lords at the very end of this video. It's slightly different for you guys, but you can't buy searchlights. So night fight is something that you will have to consider. Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry.
No problem at all. No, it's good. But yeah, no, just pair it with a cheeky Rhino, as everyone else does. Okay, so first thoughts on the autocannon. It's got play, right?
Yeah, I think it's the rending 5 up that means that it's got
and Sunder built in as well.
Yeah,
So much like the snub nose autocannon on the Saber, which we discussed in one of the other Tactica videos. I think this has got actually like it's kind of almost the boring option.
Yeah.
But I think it's cracking. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
really, really good.
I think I always think that medium armor, you're looking at the Sakarans. I think if you can glance out Sakaran on the front armor, then it's pretty good going. And this would be able to you're hoping for those rents, but the renting 5 up plus the Sunder makes this reliable. It's hitting on 2s and it's twin linked as well. So you might, more often than not, you're going to be getting those 2s. So yeah, it's a really good option. This one for medium anti-tank kind of hunting.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, medium armor. So if you've got lots of Predators or Sicarans in your meta, he's going to be absolutely great for taking that down. The other option out of the box is the Hellfire Plasma Cannonade, and this is one that I've seen in the wild an awful lot. I'd say this and the las cannon battery are probably what you tend to see actually out in the field, especially currently. So it's got 2 firing modes. It's got sustained fire, which is heavy 6, strength 7 AP4, but breaching 4 up. So nothing to be sniffed at. 6 shots, hitting on 2s typically.
Yeah.
Breaching 4 up. Lovely.
Yeah, pretty good. Yeah.
I think it's the only thing is the strength 7 that kind of hurts it because it can't double out kind of multi-wound models. But what can double out multi-wound models is if you fire it at maximal fire, which is a heavy 1, but a 5-inch large blast. So again, 5-inch blasts are pretty rare these days. So it runs on a 4, but it does get hot. But you've got plenty of wounds to try and sort of survive. It gets hot. If you're only playing a 4-turn game and you get hot every turn, you're still going to be alive on 2 wounds at the end of the game, even if you fail all your armor saves. So don't stress too much about that. But yeah, and it runs on a 4, so very similar to a Scorpius in that instance.
Yeah, I think the Plasma Cannonade is probably the one. If we're going to go out of the box, I think and you were to do a poll, I think that 70% of people will go for the Plasma. The reason why I think that there's 2 reasons why I think that the maximal fire is really strong. Number one is that if you just got a couple of Nuncio boxes in your
that's the thing.
Army, you can twin link that blast, so it becomes even more reliable because the Hellfire Plasma Cannonade isn't twin linked, unlike most of the other weapons that we've seen on it. But if you just for that blast, not for the sustained fire, but for the blast, you're going to be able to make that twin link, which is fantastic. But the other thing is that it is, John, as you say, it's strength 8, so it's doubling out multi-wound models now. But also, if you have your targeting array on, your opponent can't take now a damage mitigation roll because you're doubling out the feel no pain, unless they're like an Iron Hound fight, right? But in the main, you're doubling out the feel no pain, and you can't gain a shrouded. So I think this will be particularly devastating for just normal Marines. This will take swathes of them off the board.
Lee,
sorry, mate, go on.
No, what were you going to say? I was trying to invite you into the conversation, but
I was just going to say, kind of Rob touched on it, but version 1, everyone was used to playing large AP2 blasts and kind of deployed their army as such. Everyone would move their squads 2 inches apart, blah, 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 blah. And in version 2, I've noticed that we seem to have moved away from that. There's a complete lack of blasts. So people kind of seem to have switched off to, spreading their units out, blah, 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 blah. So I think if you played the maximal fire, you could really you'd probably have to tell your opponent beforehand, look, I do have blast, and they will fucking murder you. Because I think a lot of people have just got out of the habit of guarding against blast, Version 1, you'd be lucky to hit 2 or 3 models. But I think if you played someone now who's never played against blast, you're going to be wiping squads out with them. I think it would be fucking savage.
Yeah. I tell you what's also pretty savage, and that is the Aeolus missile launcher as well, which is absolutely no joke. And the reason it's no joke is because actually I think that it's the native AP3.
Yeah.
So the missile launcher's got 16-inch range, strength 6. So again, typically when you stand Marines on 2s, it's AP3, so they're typically not getting an arm save. It's heavy 3, so 3 shots. It's causes pinning, which is
right. Yeah,
Absolutely great. And it's got guided fire. So guided fire is a rule where any attacks made using a weapon with a special rule do not require line of sight. It must still be in range. So you can stick it behind a building where the opponent's las cannon heavy support squad can't see you. You can drop these missiles in, hitting on twos, killing on twos, can't return fire, and there's a high probability that they're going to be pinned.
Yeah. So have you got thoughts on this one, because I've got a couple of thoughts on it.
I mean, I guess my main thought is it depends really what your main weapon is for the Deredeo. If you're arming your Deredeo for anti-tank, i.e. the las cannon, then this becomes slightly irrelevant if you're firing all your weapons at tanks. You know, if you're firing at a Land Raider strength 6, it's going to do fuck all. So, but then I guess if you don't have a tank to shoot at, you still have this to pop at tac squads or scout squads or whatever's bothering you. But I think the only drawback of this is it depends what you're shooting, what you're going to be predominantly shooting at.
Yeah,
will be affected by this really. And did the old one you used to be able to just fire it at anything? Did you?
and I think it on vehicles it hit on side armor. I think it hit on side armor as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's its only downside is if you're shooting at tanks every turn, then this is just going to sit there.
Yeah.
Doing nothing really.
Yeah. So I basically would echo that. Our friend Alex made a point yesterday, which is that the Aelios missile launcher really doesn't synergize with a lot in terms of the main weapons on it. And then the problem with when you go to the Boreas is that they're exclusively Skyfire, so that doesn't really synergize as if you're trying to take like tanks off the table. I think the pinning is brilliant. Like that's really really good. As you say, like Recon Marines, because I don't think Recon Marines can take artificer armor, can they? This will just decimate things like Recon Marines. And they can't gain a shrouded save. I mean, you know, if it stays still, they can't gain a shrouded save, which is absolutely brilliant. And that 60-inch range is great as well. But night fight will again affect it. So although you don't need line of sight, I'm assuming that actually you still can't fire beyond 24 unless you've drawn a bead on them, which is a little bit confusing, I think, and a little bit odd. But I think that the best synergy comes from the plasma cannonade and the Aelios missile launcher, because the plasma cannonade you're going to use against infantry, and the Aelios you're going to use against infantry as well.
I totally agree. I'll just bang the Skyfire rule in here because obviously it's affected by the helical targeting array, but essentially it means that if you're firing at a flyer, you can shoot at your normal ballistic skill.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely wonderful. So if we do start seeing flyers, because I think we're going to see a lot of Deredeos going forwards, I think if people do start bringing flyers again, they are truly fucked.
Yeah. The other thing...
Another nail in the coffin for the Zyphon.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the other thing we haven't considered, which makes the Dreadnought so powerful in the Skyfire scenario, is that before, what you used to have in the first version is that Dreadnoughts used to be right back in the corner, and then because you had to have them pointed in a certain angle to be able to, because they had facings, right? Yeah. Whereas a Deredeo now, and it's same for Leviathan's Contemptors, but I think that it probably shows more Deredeo because it's a long range platform. It doesn't matter which way he's pointing; it could be pointing at you and still fire that way because of the way that it doesn't have facings anymore. So you really don't need to worry about where where a flyer comes on. He's just like, well, I'm just going to shoot that thing anyway because even if I'm not pointed at it, I still have line of sight. Whatever.
Is what you're saying, Rob? It can be on the 5th floor of a building facing away.
I'm not saying that. I actively discourage anybody putting Deredios on top of buildings.
Pointing away.
Unless they've got an Arvis Leicester in the army as well, then because I can imagine that it sort of like drops it down. But at any other time, get them off of buildings.
So there are other options which aren't included in the box, but are still available. First things first, thanks to Monkey Raffle for sending us a picture of his phenomenal Iron Wars, Jesus Christ, Night Lords Deredeo here with a plasma cannonade. So we've already talked about the Boreas air defense missile, which on paper is great when paired with the heavy las cannon battery, but it's actually not because it's hitting on 6s.
Yeah. Yeah.
which is unless of course you're firing at a fly.
Yeah.
So, which is a shame. I think if it was able to fire at its like normal ballistic skill,
Yeah.
utilizing these, I think this would be a good pairing.
Insane. Everybody would just take that option, wouldn't they? Like 4
Yeah, I think so. But at the same time, I mean, like they are one. So you get 4 of them, but they are only one shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
you can only fire. Yeah, you can only fire. Yeah.
Which I kind of don't hate. I don't mind limited ammunition weapon. Actually, I think they kind of add kind of quite a nice dynamic in terms of.
You got to decide when to use them.
Yeah,
is the thing. But basically, because this has guided fire, again, you're just like, oh, your flyer has come onto the board. I'm just going to intercept it, and I don't even need line of sight. Like, it doesn't even matter if I'm pointing at you or not. But I don't even need line of sight now, and it's it's 48-inch range, so it makes it even more difficult to take a flyer, as you were saying, John.
Yeah, it's very.
I run the Boreas air defense missile, and I have never fired it at a flyer.
You just fish 4 dice fishing for 6s
because they literally just get fucked into a tank or a Terminator squad or something and hope you roll a 6 because no one takes flyers.
The 5th turn, you're like, oh, okay, well, I might as well fire these things.
Yeah. So what we're saying in this instance, isn't it, is like take the las cannon battery and just take the ALS missile launcher just on the off chance that it needs to perform a slightly different task potentially.
Yeah. I think just to go back to the missile launcher quickly, I think the one thing it is really good at is I've played many a game where on the last turn you need to remove 1 or 2 fucking tactical marines
off of an objective.
Yeah, got nothing that can see them. Everything's out of range, and if you've still got that in play and it can just be like blow them off the objective, I think that probably has more play than firing missiles, air defense missiles at tanks that hit on 6s because no one takes flies. I mean,
I couldn't agree more. I think absolutely as a bit of a late turn get out of jail free card, I think it could be. Well, you can't score when you're pinned as well, can you? So
no, yeah. So yeah.
Cool. And then we have got the Arachnus heavy las cannon battery. So Lee, as a man who's used these to an underwhelming effect, as is your shtick, then take us through what's going on.
So 48-inch strength 10, AP 2, heavy 2, Sunder, Exoshock 5+, and twin linked. Do you want me to quickly read the Exoshock?
Yeah, you can do, yeah.
So if the weapon successfully scores a penetrating hit on a target, roll a d6. If the result of that roll is equal to or higher than the value in the brackets after the roll, a second automatic penetrating hit is inflicted on the same target, against which cover saves may not be taken. So if you roll a 5+, if you penetrate it, you roll a 5+, you penetrate it again. I can tell you now, I have never successfully rolled Shock 5+ in my life. I'm sure it's fucking
Sunder as well. What are you doing? Let's get yourself some new dice. You go over to the Heresy Patreon and get yourself
they're all hot. So the fact that this could have potentially, not for Lee, but for most other people, or penetrating hits, is really, really spicy, isn't it? I mean, that 4 chances to blow a vehicle up on the damage table. I mean, if the thing's not gone already, the things inside it could 4 chances to blow it up, and I think that's where it really comes into its own. I think it's almost the economy of scale. I think with this particular weapon, I really feel like 2 with this weapon are like 2 Dreadies with this weapon are disproportionately savage than just say like just 1. Because then you have 8 chances potentially if you shoot it at the same target. But I think this is great. I've seen a lot of this, and if it can double out Iron Hands players, then more the better. More locks, right? If you can double out more locks, then more the better, really. I think this is a great option. Not for Lee, but for most of the people, I think.
I think just Can I just quickly say about this? I mean, it is a good option. You know, Sunder is amazing.
Oh, it's a great option. I don't know what you're talking about. Just because you're crap at rolling dice doesn't mean it's not.
But you still need to roll a 6 to blow a tank up, and you're generally not going to roll a 6 to blow a tank up. So this is very good for like taking wounds off land raiders, destroying weapons, making things snap fire. But you're only going to blow tanks up in a turn if you're lucky and roll that 6.
Yeah,
you know I mean? It's
definitely, yeah. It's a well-balanced weapon, I think.
Actually. Yeah, and that's it. That's it exactly. You're not just going to put this on the table and be blowing up a Spartan every turn. Like it's unless you're really fucking lucky.
Yeah.
But what this is really good at is forcing, you know, like the whatever you're shooting to be shaken. You know, they'll be snap firing. They won't be able to move. You'll blow a weapon up, and then every so often you'll get lucky and you'll just pop a tank in a turn. Like they are fucking brilliant, but you aren't going to be removing that. You know, you still fives will still be a glance against a Spartan. So you've got 2 chances to roll a 5, but you're looking for 5s on a flesh shielded Spartan, you know. So you will have those turns where it may only glance a Spartan, but it's still going to be chipping wounds away. But it's as an anti-tank option, it's got to be probably one of the best.
Don't listen to him. It's guaranteed to kill a tank.
He can blow a Spartan up every turn.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've heard you blow up 2 Spartans every turn.
The left Spartan and the right Spartan.
Yeah. Boo boo.
And then we've got the black sheep of the family, the Volkite Falconets, which I think, like everything apart from Culverins, kind of is a bit underwhelming. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's like a baby version of the Kratos, because it's obviously got the pinning, which the Kratos one does.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I don't think the Kratos one has twin link, but you have the ability to make it twin link through the coax.
Auto cannon,
through the auto cannon. So it's an unusual one, I think, because it falls under that kind of that plasma of being anti-infantry. Because of the nature of it, but it's not as reliable at anti-tank because it hasn't got the Sunder and the rending, right? But you could still potentially use it for hitting light armor. So it's in this like bizarre, weird kind of like place of being all right but not amazing at killing infantry as the plasma, and then it's not quite as good or reliable at killing tanks as the autocannon. But certainly, if you've got a theme to a force, you know, you're spamming Volkites and you absolutely fucking love Volkites, then this could be really useful. You know, you get a lot of diff aggregates. You might play, say, like a lot of mech, or you play a lot of like solar against them. Then this might be a good option. But I think that in the main, there are the other weapons for me. I think would be more.
Yeah, I would agree. If I'm being honest with you, I think this is probably a tough sell. I think as well, if you want to, even if you want to keep it cheap, like I'd probably still run the auto cannon battery over this. Like if you wanted to keep it kind of pretty bare bones, I think auto cannon battery and an Aeolus missile launcher for 5 points, like 210 points, I think is still really, really good. I'd probably rather take it in most instances over the Volkite. Maybe if you are used to running like Volkite teams, you maybe want to do something a bit differently. Go for it. But
John, what so for Iron Warriors, do they have the potential to make their heavy bolters pinning? Is that or is it just their bolters?
No, this is the thing, right? So you can't upgrade any heavy bolter to be shrapnel.
Shrapnel bolter, okay.
So
I was like, oh well, if you put a pinning heavy bolter plus the pinning from the Aeolus and then the pinning Vulcanet, you've got quite a lots of pinning checks potentially.
I don't believe so. Do you know what? I haven't slept very well today, so
why don't you have a look?
I'm now incredibly doubting myself, but I think you have to.
Is it just a pinning bolter potentially? So just while you're looking that up, I think the other thing though, and kind of just going back to the Iron Warriors, and I think we will talk about kind of Legion special rules, but the fact that the Volkite Falconet can get to strength 8 against Dreads, Automata, and tanks, I think does then make it a more interesting choice. I think because it, that heavy 8 shot strength 8 could do some serious damage to tanks, right? So yeah,
I think the Volkite is probably one of the weapons that synergizes the best with the other weapons it has.
Great. Yeah.
So if you have a Volkite, you've got heavy bolters, and you've got the missile launcher. Yeah. You're going to be sweeping away tactical squads unless the sergeant's rolling 1,000.
And it's 2 pinning checks, right? You got a pinning check from that, and then you got a pinning check from that, because you do pinning checks for every weapon
But then I just have to question: is that the best use of a Deredeo to be going after bog standard infantry units and the likes of? I don't know. I mean, it depends what you need in your list, really, doesn't it?
And I think that's actually, to be fair, that links back to what we're saying at the beginning. There is actually quite a lot of versatility in here.
Oh yeah.
I think we had a very big discussion about Leviathans. Obviously, Leviathan's probably got slightly more utility just because it can perform very, very well in combat and does a job there as well. But also, this is like 70 points cheaper.
Yeah.
And if you haven't got 300 odd points to invest in Leviathan, but you've got 200 points and you need something to do a job, I think that like a Deredeo can really do a job. I was right about the Iron Warriors. You can't switch out the heavy bolts. A Dreadnought can only switch out a Gravis bolt cannon for a Gravis shrapnel.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
If it on a vehicle, however, you can make it shrapnel. So, whilst we're on the subject of Legion rules, let's talk about some of the Legion rules. So, there are lots of options for things that you can do with them. As an example, like the Imperial Fist will give you, if you're running the Anvilus autocannons, will give you +1 to hit.
And the heavy bosses, actually.
But Twin Links and your BS5, so it would affect you maybe again in that first turn night fight potentially, but it's quite a lazy one to look at. To be fair, it's the Iron Warriors one as well. You get +1. But the thing is, you see, as well, that makes things like the autocannon potentially devastating. Like it's straight with rending 5 up and sunder.
Yeah.
With 4 shots, obviously, it makes your Arachnus heavy las cannon battery strength 11.
It's nuts. Like that's it. It's just like disproportionately makes all the other options just so. I think Iron Warriors players have a tougher time choosing which one to use because just like, all of them now become so good that you're just like, which one? Something good becomes even better, and something like mediocre becomes good, right? So you have a tough choice.
So things like the Iron Wing's an interesting one. Obviously, a lot of the weapons are twin linked, so you're maybe not necessarily taking advantage of the -1 of the kind of re-rolling ones to hit. But what you might be able to take effect of is the fact that with your air defense missiles, you can fire at standard targets BS2.
Yeah, that's interesting. Actually,
BS1 because you're making a snapshot, so you're going to be hitting on 5s as opposed to 6s, so you're doubling your chance of actually hitting with one of those things.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, but I was like BS2, but I see what you're saying. You have it's either a one. You can re-roll that one. Yeah, okay, I get you. Yeah.
So like I said, so your air defense missiles would be snapshooting against non-skyfight, against non-flying targets. So all of a sudden now you are hitting on 5s, and only 1 you can re-roll. So you've got more of a chance of hitting with those air defense missiles. So I think that's an area where you might see them. Obviously, we've got like Strength of Wisdom for Ultramarines again. So you're getting like +1 to hit with your air defense missiles if you're running them in an Ultramarines army. If it's been targeted on your cheeky Rhino with its searchlight.
Yeah, it's interesting actually because the way that you're describing it, I would view it the opposite way, which is that the Deredeo can draw a bead on something, and then that can then give surrounding tanks the plus, the additional to BS.
All that can go. Exactly.
Which is really interesting. I mean, if we've just put Night Fight aside, that first turn aside, in the main, the Deredeo has very long range and and is also BS5 already. So surrounding tanks or surrounding heavy support teams, it could bump up their ballistic skill if you're firing at the same target, which could be really powerful. And then it would be interesting to see and speak to World Ultramarines players about how exactly they interpret anything with guided fire, because you're like, oh well, I'm just going to ping this over there, and then even if that Deredeo can't see, then it gives the surrounding things an additional ballistic
Yeah,
skill.
absolutely.
Yeah, interesting.
Precisely.
Very interesting.
Really, really useful.
Yeah.
Salamander's one I think is just make again. I think it makes Dreadnought chassis as a whole just so super survivable. Because realistically, the only things with a high strength that are going to be targeting you are going to be las cannons. Anything else, if it's like melter or plasma, which again we're seeing a lot more of at the moment because of the the kind of variety of kits that are available. It's -1 to be wounded, so I think it kind of keeps it alive a little bit longer, and it gains it will not die 6 up, which I think is
that's great. Yeah,
is pretty useful.
Yeah.
We've got, like I said, the obvious one is Iron Warriors and Rack and Ruin. Like it just turns a lot of those anti-armor kind of weapons and turns up to 11. Like it makes the autocannon, I think, absolutely brilliant. Because all of a sudden the autocannon is effective strength 8. It's running on a 5 up and it's got sunder. So you're just fishing for 5s. And as soon as you get a 5, you're adding your 5 plus D3 to 8 for your armor pen roll.
Yeah.
Yes, it's only AP4, so it can't blow anything up, but it can immobilize stuff. It can blow weapons off. It can just chip hull points away at stuff. Really useful.
I mean, you're essentially making a shooting platform better at shooting. Like what's not to like even the Volkite becomes strength 8. I mean, you're stripping land raiders at that strength. It's with 8 shots. It's fucking It's just what's not to love. Play Iron Warriors.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. Talent for Murder is kind of an interesting one I tend to find in a lot of instances. I think, if I'm being honest with you, I think when we talked about in the tactic we did about sabers, I think Iron Warrior sabers are phenomenal because they effectively count as 10 models for the purposes. So 2 sabers is going to count as 20 models for the purposes of Talent for Murder.
But I think the Dreadnoughts are just one where it comes in for their Night Lords is that they can buy prey sight.
Correct.
That's the thing for Night Lords that makes the Deredios so devastating.
Yeah.
Is that just like, oh, not only do I ignore your Shrouded save, but I also ignore your ignore night fighting as well. And in fact, I think that the prey sight gives night vision, and I think that ignores Shrouded saves as well. So it's just like they're just so devastating. With Deredios.
I can shoot you with no penalties, and you can't shoot me back.
Yeah. Did you put the Thousand Suns one? Because Thousand Suns are basically completely useless with a Deredio. They have no special rule whatsoever.
No, I was more a case of looking to buff units, but actually when I reread some of the rules in my haze this morning, I was thinking, because obviously some of like the kind of the minor arcanas you can do things, or with some of the psychic powers you can
so interesting. Yeah, so it's interesting, I think, with Dreadnoughts and Thousand Suns. So basically the only way to give a Dreadnought model Cult Arcana is to take the Asira Dreadnought. Normal Contemptors.
Yeah, I was more sometimes referring to. I was in my head. I was thinking about like things like giving it precision shot.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. That. I mean, a precision shot las cannon, strength 10 las cannon. Like those things combined together, I think
that's fucking brilliant.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, giving
a shot Aeolus missile launcher as well. Like you can just if you've got a heavy support squad with no artificer armor, a sergeant in there, you can just ping the sergeant out, ping that guy out, ping that guy out.
That I think it becomes like really, really devastating. I think that's I love that. I love backfield heavy support kind of like style. Like Master of Signal or something for Thousand Suns with corresponding rule, just then giving precision shot to the Deredios or a Deredio. I think that is a great option.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's where I was going with this. I wasn't necessarily wanting them to have a minor arcana themselves. More
no. Well, I think
leveraging psychic powers.
I think Thousand Suns players would want them to have a minor arcana because I mean, otherwise the dreads just don't benefit in any way, shape, or form.
No, I know. So, bless them. So we've been chatting for quite a long time about the old Deredeo. Hopefully, it's given you some kind of. I'll be honest with you. Like prior to me receiving my boxes and sitting down and putting this together, I was thinking, I'll probably just sell my Deredeos. I'm probably never going to use them. But actually, now I'm thinking, how can I shoehorn these Deredeos into my list?
Yeah.
So
the Iron Warriors as well, right?
Exactly. I'm going to have to get Quartermaster out later and do some hardcore list hammering this afternoon before I actually start equipping them. So. It'd be really interesting to know what your kind of plans are for your Deredeos, where you think they're going to fit into your list, what roles they're playing, anything that we've missed or not touched on, or you want us to kind of cover again or in future. Let us know. So yeah, we hope you've enjoyed this. We'd like you to continue to send us your pictures of your Deredeos. Why not hashtag them Heresy Hammer? We'll pick some out on our next main show to look through. Obviously, this is on the main feed as well as a Patreon. So please like the video, subscribe, comment, and share. And if you would like to see more of the kind of in-depth Tactica videos alongside all of our event materials and rewards and competitions and giveaways, then you can subscribe from just £3 a month on Patreon. We've got about 40 hours of additional content, I think.
I mean, if you liked this video and if you watch this video all the way through, then there's even more of those tactical videos on Patreon that you can access.
Yeah.
Right? So
you can subscribe today, and whilst you're sitting there hobbying, putting together your Deredeos, you can just listen to us go on and on and on and on about how things that you thought were shit might actually be quite good.
Or are just shit.
or the occasional conclusion that they're actually a bit shit. But more often than not, which we end up putting a positive spin on stuff, I think. Yeah. So we'd like to give ourselves the benefit of the doubt. And lastly, obviously, if you've got any comments, questions, list submissions, anything you want to discuss with us, then you can drop us an email at heresyhammer30k@gmail.com. And we hope you enjoy your hobby weekend and enjoy your Deredeos.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Right. Until next time. See you later.
See you guys. Bye-bye.